Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe. He's CJ Vogel. The hay is in the barn. Sark's Thursday pregame Zoom call is done. We're talking Texas and Florida. We'll give you the rundown of what the head coach had to say on Thursday. Let's thank our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Football and say thank you very much to our friends over at Hargrove Roofing with offices across Texas, including Austin, as well as Louisiana and Arkansas. Hargrove Roofing will take care of all of your roofing needs. Plus, they're Longhorn friendly with partners like former defensive tackle Stevie Lee. They're the most pro burnt orange roofing company out there. No one wants to turn their home over to a company they can't trust. So call Hargrove today for a free, no strings attached roof inspection. Just call 512-645-3202. Again, that's 512-645-3202. Hargrove Roofing. Know who's on your roof. CJ, Sark seems to have an idea who's going to be on the travel squad, who's going to be heading with the team to Gainesville. On Monday, he was pretty coy about Emtt Mosley's availability. You've been reporting all week that he has been practicing. The way Sark talked on that Zoom call, CJ, I think we'll see Emtt Mosley make his Texas debut in Gainesville.
Yeah, it certainly felt that way. You know, going back to your point, Monday, it felt like, oh, it's a big unknown. And even Arch Manning afterwards said, hey, I don't want to give anything away. But today it felt like Sark was basically given the green light for Emtt Mosley to see the field that's in some capacity this weekend in the Swamp against Florida. Of course, this would be the first time that Texas would see Emtt Mosley on the field as a Texas Longhorn. And, you know, he spoke at length about what he would bring to this offense. And it's a guy with great perimeter blocking skills and another guy with length. And if Texas wanted to, Jeff, they could go really big at the wide receiver position with Ryan Wingo, Parker Livingstone, and now Emtt Mosley. That's size that Texas hasn't seen at any time in the Steve Sarkisian era, and provide a lot of difficulty for opposing defenses to kind of sit there and pick on one or two guys that they're going to have to hone in on, given the length and size across the board.
Yeah, and we know Florida is down some bodies in the secondary. And one thing that I thought, Sark got into, Sark never gives us anything on game planning, but he does get into some football philosophy, some football theory type discussions. And I thought one of the things he talked about with Emtt Mosley in terms of the perimeter blocking, CJ, and it makes sense. Hey, if we can get our perimeter screen game going and get the defensive backs to try to come up and be physical to prevent the perimeter screen game, now you're talking about explosive plays opening up down the field. And as you get into conference plays, CJ, those opportunities you've got to create explosives, they're going to be precious opportunities you've got to maximize, especially there's been a lot of talk this year about Arch's struggles. Yep. One thing Arch has done really well, it's one of the best deep ball throwing quarterbacks in the country. If you can create more opportunities for your guys to get vertical, that should mean more success for you in the explosive play department.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you're probably not going to see a 50-yard touchdown right on the money each week. That's a hard thing to do. But what you will see is Texas throw those quick screens. And what Texas did a very fine job of against Sam Houston State 2 weeks ago was the wide receiver screens. There were two specifically that went for a combined 65 yards, Jeff. That's free money if you're an offensive coordinator, if you're a play caller, if you're a quarterback. That's not having to do a whole lot and seeing results that otherwise you would have had to work very, very hard for, right? And he commended the efforts of DeAndre Moore, Ryan Wingo on the perimeter blocking for a Dalen McCutcheon screen that went for 20 yards. He said, hey, if we can get the ball to our playmakers on the outside and allow our big guys to go make running lanes afterward, like the play to Ryan Niblett as well, that's a big bonus. So to get another big time blocking wide receiver out there who also is a playmaker of his own right with Emtt Mosley. Well, there you go, Jeff. And that allows you to have that defensive secondary creep down on you, press for some of these big time screen plays. And of course, Texas week 2, what'd they hit on? It was a screen and go to Parker Livingstone for 83 yards that will allow those big plays to occur naturally as a result.
CJ, I'm as of right now, I'm looking at AccuWeather for Gainesville on Saturday. Got a high of 82 degrees, 88% chance of participation, 35% chance of thunderstorms, wind east-northwest, wind out of the east-northeast at 13 miles per hour. The weather could be a factor. We talked about it all week, and it's good to know that, just a reminder that, hey, practicing with a wet ball isn't something that's going to be foreign to Texas, because Sark reiterated again today, that's something they just do every week just because.
Yeah, it was a really good answer to hear if you're, wondering how Texas will be prepared for this game. Sark saying, yeah, we plan for the expected and we plan for the unforeseen. Of course, mentioning the weather in Gainesville this weekend. So we will have a day each week of practice where our quarterbacks and centers go through wet ball exchanges under center. Of course, the quarterbacks and the running backs will then take care of wet ball exchanges and handoffs and toss plays. And then the wide receivers will have a day in practice each week in which they are catching wet passes in routes. So Texas is fully prepared for what's to come with the weather. Sark says that this is something that you have to be prepared for. You cannot be caught surprised by what might come in a given game situation. So Texas will be prepared if wet weather is there. My big question, Jeff, how does the wind play a factor? You can't really replicate wind and punt coverage or kickoff situations. That's where I'm wondering, how might that impact this game this weekend?
Yeah, and we've talked a lot, and it's been top of mind for me, those situations when you get into scoring territory. Do you take the points? Do you go for it on fourth down? If there's a pretty hellacious wind blowing in your face, your odds might be better to go for it on 4th and 2 or 4th and 3 than bring out Mason Shipley for what otherwise would be a chip shot field goal if the weather is making it improbable or just seriously diminishes your odds. Field position, CJ, is another thing that's going to be huge in this game, like you said. And it is worth noting, we didn't see him on the injury report that came out Wednesday night from the conference, but Sark did say they will have Will Stone back this week on kickoff. So at least in all three areas, you'll have the guys that are normally in those jobs, but maybe this is just me overanalyzing it, CJ, about 48 hours until kickoff. You're not asking Mason Shipley not to double up, being your kickoff guy and your field goal guy. You just have him focusing on that one job.
Yeah, good to hear. Will Stone will be back. We didn't hear whether or not it was an injury that caused his absence or what that injury might have been, but he will be back this weekend for the Florida game. And Jeff, you're right. You know, it's interesting to talk about field position. It's also interesting going back a week when I asked Sark about, you know, what his philosophy is when winning the toss. He said, yeah, I always like to have that option to receive the kickoff for the second half. I like getting my defense out there to begin games. Texas has only done that 1 out of the 4 games this year. But he also said, hey, you know, factors that go into that decision include weather. In a fourth quarter of a close game, we'd like to have the wind at our back in case we need to kick a game-winning field goal. Let's see if that plays into a factor if Texas wins the toss this weekend or not. Kickoffs, field goal attempts, all of that going to be all the more important considering how much wind might be available this weekend.
And CJ, I like that Sark gets granular with those kinds of responses because we've heard coaches say this before. Hey, they've gotten word that a cold front might be blowing in the second half.
Yeah.
So you may want to set it up to, hey, all we care about is just having the wind at our back in the fourth quarter once that cold front blows in and you're playing in the 30-mile-an-hour wind all of a sudden. So coaches it's not just a decision of, hey, we want to start fast or whatever. Like you said, it gets pretty meticulous. Speaking of starting fast, CJ, this is something that you've been big on this year, the fast starts and sometimes lack thereof of the Texas offense. If you're basically on a scale of 1 to 10, what importance do you put on getting off to a fast start for this offense in this game?
You know, oddly, I don't put it very high. And I say that because I look at Florida and say they probably won't get off to a fast start either, right? Texas's defense under Pete Kwiatkowski has been great in terms of halting first drives, first quarters of opponents, right? That opening script defensively has been great for Texas. And on the flip side, look, we haven't seen Florida necessarily be world beaters when it comes to their quarterback and their offense as well. So all the while, it would definitely help if Texas were to get out early, kind of silence the crowd a little bit, allow some cushion for things to go awry on the road because they will. Playing in the SEC, it'll do that. But right now, it's probably a 5 out of 10, a 4 out of 10. It's going to be really interesting if Texas does take the kick. What does that opening script look like for Texas? How aggressive are they, knowing that any and all points are welcomed, considering the weather and opponent?
Well, let's talk about the running back situation really quick because we saw on the Wednesday injury report, CJ Baxter's doubtful. It looks like they're probably not going to have him available. Trey Wisner, most likely expected back. Jarrett Gibson becomes really interesting in this game, CJ, because I'm a James Simon fan. I know you like James Simon. Everybody here at OTF, we love James Simon and what he brings to the table. But Jarrett Gibson's interesting because he's going back to Gainesville native. I saw some things in the Sam Houston game that encouraged me. Sark said he felt like Jarrett Gibson learned a really valuable lesson in the San Jose State game when he fumbled and them just driving home the point to him. Hey, as physical as you run the football, holding on to it is paramount because you're going to take hits. They're going to have more opportunities for the ball to get knocked loose. CJ, what's your take on the running back situation right now? Obviously, without CJ Baxter, but Trey Weiser's probably not going to get 30 carries coming off an injury. You're going to need some of those other guys to step up and carry the load.
Yeah, that fumbling, lesson probably has been taught and learned a couple times now for Jarrett Gibson. But hey, fortunately, we've seen him now take care of the football 2 games in a row. That's going to be paramount because Texas will likely trot out Jarrett Gibson as the first running back if Trey Wisner is not 100%. Now, can Trey give you 5, 10, maybe 15 carries? I think 15 would be stretching it quite a bit, but you're going to take what he can give you, of course. I've been encouraged by what I've seen by Jarrett Gibson, Jeff, and I do think that he does a very fine job of finding the hole. He gets small for how wide and how physical that he runs. He has great vision, cutback ability as well. I know that we've been pushing the James Simon button pretty heavily over the last few weeks, but I'm not ready to say, hey, Jarrett Gibson, you're old news. No, he's looked good. Now let's see if he can carry on that running approach with ball protection against quality opponents. That's what I want to see. And I do think the staff will trust him enough to do exactly that this Saturday.
Sark did mention on the call that Gibson is a really good short yardage runner. I don't think that surprised any of us, but to your point, you got to see him take another step because you can't be predictable when he's in the game, feeling like, okay, if he's in the game, you're just going to have him hammer it between the tackles. Got to expand that skill set a little bit. We'll see if we see Christian Clark at the very least right now, not planning on CJ Baxter being a part of the running back mix. CJ, I want to get to this real quick before we wrap this up. Sark talked a lot about people having to just recalibrate expectations, how they view, records and all the coverage that's on college football, all the attention on it. And I want to get some context to it, and you can back me up on this because we were both on the SEC teleconference on Wednesday with Sark. He was asked about Sam Pittman at Arkansas and basically his thoughts on, early season firings. And he said on the call, look, people are just going to have to wrap their heads around 9-3 is a good season in college football right now. Now, I don't think he was saying that. I give that in context. He's not saying that to set up saying, Texas is planning on losing a couple more games. But CJ, I think it drives home the point as Texas gets into conference play. I don't see a scenario where one of the 2 teams in Atlanta or both teams that are in Atlanta playing for the SEC championship are undefeated. I just don't think anybody is going through this league undefeated. And I think especially as you go forward and go to a 9-game schedule next year for the foreseeable future, I definitely don't think you're going to see any undefeated teams in the SEC.
No, definitely not in the SEC. It's too dog-eat-dog right now, and we've talked about it. There's probably not a team that's head and shoulders above the rest. In fact, I think it's just kind of a conglomeration of really good teams, right? No one is especially great right now. And as a result, you're going to see these guys beat each other up. It's kind of what we expected the Big 12 to look like a few years ago, I guess last year in its first year where it was just a bunch of pretty solid teams going after one another. This year, it's a bunch of good teams all fighting one another. But to Sark's point, look, you're going to play 16, 17 games perhaps. That's tough to win every single one, especially when you're potentially playing 14 of them against high-quality Division I SEC level teams. It's a tough thing to do unless you just have a team that is legendary almost. And so for Sark, hey, I don't know if it's necessarily limiting expectations or kind of putting a silencer on what some of the folks outside have expectations for, but it's more just a sign of what's the realistic expectation in today's world of college football. You use the word recalculate pretty often there, Jeff. Yeah. And I think that right now kind of gives an understanding of how he's viewing a successful season and how Texas needs to perform to get back to the college football playoff.
And what I took from that is kind of my last take on it. I think Sark is 100% right. However you do it, and it's really become kind of an NFL mindset, CJ. Yeah. However you have to do it, just get yourself in the tournament. Just get there, give yourself a chance. And if you've managed your roster correctly, if you've pushed the right buttons in talent acquisition and player development, you're going to give yourself a chance. Doesn't matter if you're 9-3, 10-2, whatever it is, just get yourself in the tournament to give yourself a chance.
I was going to say something very similar. Sark said, hey, we feel like we can win with the team that we've constructed in a variety of ways, playing a different style of game if needed. This weekend might be one of those games where it might not be the prettiest, but however you can get it done on the road in the SEC, that's how you need to perform, and that's ultimately the goal, escape with a win.
My golden rule of this conference, never, ever, ever apologize for winning a road game in the SEC conference.
I like
Texas will try to do that on Saturday in the Swamp against Florida. CJ, thank you for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to our friends at Hargrove Roofing for sponsoring this edition of On Texas Football. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to the entire On Texas Football staff. If you're not a member, over at ontexasfootball.com, get over to the site right now. Sign up using the promo code OTFOG. That'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $39.95. Make sure you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's here on the channel or on the site, you're not missing any of our coverage before, during, and after every Texas game this season. For CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, welcome.